Access granted.
At where you're going, like all things Amaya, all things graphic design and creative direction. So for the people who don't know you, give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a creative director, designer based in New York. I've worked for the music industry for about like 10 years. And before that, I was kind of more in entertainment, like, TV channel facing. Um, and I work mostly on artist rollouts, albums, stage design, all these kind of different facets of what it means to be an artist today, which really spans everywhere from like social media and creative strategy thinking for that, and then all the way over, of course, to the manifestation in real life, events, real life. Pop-up shops, all that stuff really needs to be branded and thought through, and you really need to understand which piece of the story for the artist needs to go on which platform. So that's kind of what I do.
Ugh, love that. And that is a whole kind of what we were talking about literally 8 seconds ago about how there's a whole process that comes with developing those kinds of things. And it's real skill. I feel like a lot of people who think they can do something like that could be put in that position and they're not going to be able to execute as well as they think they can. That's something that takes like practice and dedication and attention to detail. But before we even get into that, I want to know like your background story, how you kind of got started. Was graphic design something that you always wanted to do, or were you in a different creative field and were led to graphics? Like, what's your story about how that started?
Yeah. There's some fun lore back there.
I love it. I love it.
And I've told the story a couple times, I think, but the reality, the all kind of came together on a rap forum. I was really young, super nerdy in high school, and but I had started writing slam poetry. And so I was writing all the time. And this was the time, this is very early reggaeton, like it hadn't crossed over to the US kind of vibes.
I love that.
And there were only like certain forums where you could find the newest like music on that. And so I would go on those forums to like troll for new tracks. And then I saw that there was a battle forum for like battle rapping. Like, of course.
I love that.
For whatever reason. And so I started like battle rapping on the forum, and basically how that would just work is just like someone would post a verse and you had like a certain amount of time, depending on what they said, to post your verse back.
Right.
And in that you kind of go building crews that would, as one does when one's street battle rapping on the internet.
Right.
But you go building crews. And so once I had my crew, I was like, oh, we need really sick branding. So every other battle rap crew on the forum knows who we are. So I jumped into Photoshop and started making little banners, and then other teams started jacking my banners. And I was
of
like,
course.
What?
Of course.
So then I started making even sicker banners still. And that kind of led to a couple people on the forum being like, hey, would you want to work on my MySpace, my artist MySpace mixtape drop? And I was like, absolutely, because all of us were coders back then. Yes. Don't know a single code term now, but back then I was all about it. So I got into a lot of that, and that kind of started opening the door where I realized there needed to be a place where my written creativity words kind of met my visuals. So then I really started getting into graphic design, and graphic design really felt like that place where I could speak to messages both with words and with visuals without having to choose one or the other. So that's kind of like the lore of where it really started. But then from there, obviously graduated high school and went on to study in the Dominican Republic graphic design.
Very cool.
Yes. Plot twist. Didn't expect that. But there's actually a Parsons affiliate school in the Dominican Republic called Artos de Chabón that's like was super intensive and honestly like probably the best experience of my arts education, because I was just kind of like locked in the countryside with a bunch of artists making art
Yeah.
day in, day out. So that was really cool. And from there, I just kind of went on to Parsons, finished out my 2 years there, and then just started working immediately, jumping into working. I think the first official post college gig was working with either Disney or Remescla. I can't remember, but both of them were like slightly music adjacent, entertainment adjacent, and I just kind of went building towards that. I honestly didn't think I could make it all the way into music because when I was in college, it was like we had just gotten slapped with the crazy Napster crisis
Oh,
after that. Like,
yes.
I mean, it wasn't
Yes.
just then, but it was like Napster had come before. So music was still like in recovery. And a lot of people were like, I remember I asked this guy who came to speak, and he was like a agency that worked with like jazz festivals. And I was like,
Mm,
do you think I could ever work in music? And he's like, if you're good. And I'm like,
mm,
period. That's easy. Okay, let's get
mhm,
that done.
mhm. That
So
is so cool. I love that story. So, okay, I have so many questions. So, and this is good because this is kind of going into my next question. So, talk to me about how that experience was graphic designing in Dominican Republic, and like how what type of influences inspired you like being over there. And I noticed, and I peeped in your bio that you had the Dominican flag. I was like, ooh, I love that. And I want to talk about culture and how those things play a part of every designer's like individual design style.
yeah.
So, what artistically was your experience going to school over there?
I think it's so interesting because the reality is when you are in, like, when I say we were off in the countryside, we were literally like cobblestone roads, you know,
Mhm,
like, so it was really like you're in a vacuum of creatives. So the
mhm,
art you create, you know, your audience is all creatives, you know, so
mhm.
it can be a lot more like, guys, this is an anomaly and it's meant to represent my
You
feelings.
can be
You
so
know?
off the wall and artsy and
Yeah,
just like
like, I'm like, "Can you
avant-garde.
see the use of repetition here?" You know, like, and, I think the thing about that's very interesting, having gone to college in the US and in the Dominican Republic, it was interesting in the Dominican Republic, the teachers weren't afraid to tell you your art was bad.
Mm.
While I think in the US, it was a little more like, "Hmm,
Gold star. Gold
they're like,
star. Thank you.
"Well,
Good job.
thank you for that effort. Let's go over here," you know?
Yes. Yes.
While in the DR, there was very strict policy that if, like, in a lot of my classes, that if your assignment didn't meet the criteria of the assignment, it had to be taken off the wall before the class started for
Mm,
critique.
mm, mm.
And there were teachers that were like, "I'm not starting because there's assignments on there that don't go." And
Ooh,
so
brutal.
you might have to be the one to be like, "Sorry, guys, I want to get this class going. So, friend, I'm gonna take yours down because I know it's not working,
Oh,
respectfully." Um,
love that
so
though. That's real.
yeah, it was very real, and it really helped you understand that critique isn't personal. It's really
Mhm.
about you getting the message across, and if your audience is telling you that the message isn't being received, then you gotta take a look again because graphic design is about communication, right? It's about
Exactly.
creating a visual language, so your audience is also the client in a way.
Yes, it's so true. And I tell people that all the time. So I actually went to school for media production, but I started in journalism. And
Mhm,
literally, just like you, I was trying to figure out how I could creatively communicate messaging like that. And I was big on Tumblr, like always mood boarding,
mm,
always
love
like
Tumblr.
slight um I don't want to say coding, but little stuff like that. Like literally the antithesis of MySpace, or like the what comes after MySpace. But yeah, I really just was trying to figure out, and I always knew that the most important thing was to get the message across.
Mhm,
And people, that's kind of like the difference between like art for fun and art for business. You still, even though it could be beautiful, it could be a great design, but do we get the message? Like, are people going to buy off of this design? I always think about that with clients. I'm like, this design is going to make this client more money. Like, are we going to get the right people to look and get the right people to invest? So I love that. That that they prioritize that, because I think that that's something that, artists, we get really deep into the process. I mean, the designs are our babies, art is our babies. I totally get it.
Mhm.
But learning how to detach, I would have appreciated learning about detachment and critique early on,
Yeah.
because that's something I'm struggling with right now. So that's really, really cool that they incorporated that kind of brutal aspect
Yeah.
of.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
real. I love that. I love that you mentioned this too, because I recently went to the Envision Latino and Music and Film Festival in Miami, and I kind of learned about, Miami Latino culture and how that's incorporated, how they had a whole bunch of creatives, filmmakers, writers, artists, producers, singers, DJers, and it was so cool to see how everybody's like Latino culture influence different mediums of creativity. So do you
Mhm.
have anything like growing up, as far as like your Dominican background, or like going to schools there, that has directly influenced or inspired your graphic design work consistently, or maybe have in the past, like for specific projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I love working in the Latin space, first of all. So obviously when I worked on like there was a cover art I did for Becky G and Berna. It was like a song that they did for like a World Cup situation or something.
Mm.
And the type that I used on that song was very much modeled after those kind of um like the quick posters that they would do for concerts and pin up on the post boards all over the place, or like the lightings. I don't know what,
Yeah.
you know what word I'm
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
do. I do.
Lighting
I do.
poles
Yeah,
outside.
the light
I'm not an
poles.
electrician.
Yes, yes. And they would like tape it. Sometimes they would
Yeah.
literally like nail
Yeah,
it to the yes.
so that is a huge, I mean, the Dominican Republic, I actually have a pin, like a highlight on my profile of just signage I take pictures of in the Dominican Republic and stuff like that, because I'm truly obsessed with the hand painting. Hand painting is so important. But even more than that, I'm a kid of the diaspora, right? I was born
Mhm.
here in New York, and the Bronx has had a huge influence in my aesthetic, because when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to be a graffiti artist.
Mhm.
Um, so there was, I still have like endless graffiti books. I think one of the first ones I got was the Japanese one, Rakgaki, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna kill this. I'm like, I'm gonna do so good. Did like 2 pieces on a wall, and I was like, awesome. Moving back to the computer. Um,
Right. That's
but
cool.
the Bronx really kind of brought that, because I felt like that was mine. I don't know, from a very young age, it was like, oh, I can do graffiti.
Yeah.
I definitely can. Like I never doubted it. It wasn't something that I was like, can I do? It was like, I'm absolutely gonna do graffiti. So I think those kind of worlds meshed, where you have this like rich history of hand painted signage in the Dominican Republic from all the colmados and bodegas and stuff like that, and bancas. And then you kind of meet that with the aesthetic of all this like hand painted also graffiti from the Bronx. So I do have a lot of love for typography in my work. And that's actually my Instagram handle comes from that. It's always because I think there's that Ellen Lupton quote, typography is what language looks like. And I've
Mhm.
always thought about that so much. Like from the moment I saw it, I was like, oh, this quote gets me,
Yeah.
like, because I really feel like the same way you put intonation to a word when you say it, that's like the visual is the intonation you're giving the person when they're reading it. So I really feel like it may not seep into every project, but it was the origin point of my love of typography.
I love that. And like, I have another question. This is so intuitive and so natural. Like, I love this because I noticed that you work a lot. I love your typography. Like, I like how you play with the letters and like the typefaces and the kerning and the shadows. Like, that's something that I noticed about um one of the elements that I really appreciate about your artwork. But we gonna talk about that later. I want to talk about more about your influences. So
Mhm.
I know you said you really were into graffiti, but were there any specific like artists or musicians, filmmakers, like any creative of any sort, or maybe even somebody that's not in the creative industry that inspired you, or somebody who you can always go back to, and it's like they continuously always are making me feel like I want to go harder or do more and be more creative? Is there anybody
Oh,
that you can think of?
it's like the opposite. It's like everybody. I'm looking at
Ah,
everything. I'm like a tree. Oh, I'm inspired. Look at the shadows.
I love
Like
that. Yes.
I'm never no, I could go on for days. I mean, it depends on the different categories. I really love seeing what other creatives do, because to me it's like I can see, oh, look what they did. They kind of, use this to make this kind of shadow here. So maybe if I were to do that same lighting technique, but put it over here and do it with this object, it would do something completely different. So I mean, there's the standardized graphic response that, yes, I mean, David Carson had a huge influence in my work because I do love punk typography and I love that kind of 90s grunge. I'm a child
Hmm.
of the 90s, it is what,
Yeah.
but but I feel like in terms of influences, I feel like that actually is part of what keeps my work fresh, hopefully, in my
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
That I don't feel like there's one guiding through line. I've been inspired continuously and over, sometimes by my own friends. Big shout out to Adrian Martinez, who is a huge inspiration to me on stage and stuff like that. I love seeing his work. There's just so many other creatives that I like always watch. I only know a lot of their Instagram handles,
No,
so
I feel that. And I was like, should I send her? Because I'm like, if somebody asked me this, I would definitely be like, ooh. And then later in the shower, be like, oh, this person.
right, that is gonna happen. And I mean, they know I'm not shy. I'll be online and I'll be like, oh, I love this. And I
Me
like
too.
when I go to new cities, I'll DM creatives and be like, hey, I'm in the city. Like, let's meet up, let's talk nerdy stuff.
Yes.
So I hope everyone whose work I admire, like I think his name is MFB Visuals or MF
Hmm.
or MBF, something like that. He did like the Kalani Toxic cover, or not
Yes, yes.
toxic, the one where she was like looking over the fence with
The
the,
fence, yes, with the hose.
yeah,
Yes,
I
that
love
was
I love
that
that animated
great.
cover, and I love that moment because there was just so like you
Yes.
couldn't stop looking at the cover. You were trying to know what she was looking at, and he like animated it. I don't know if he shot the cover and did the creative and the end, but I always remember when I saw the animated one. So I have like a lot of moments like that where I just
Hmm.
like remember certain moments when I saw certain things,
Same.
um, and I'm super excited by it, and then just kind of go off and take that into my own brain to see what I come up with.
No, I love that. And I feel like that's a true like creative answer, because it really is creativity is everywhere. And I think that something that I've learned is that creativity is everywhere. Like I love certain aesthetics. Like I'm such a cyberpunk futuristic, like Tron, all of that. That is really my jam. But really, anything from anywhere can be pulled into that world to build it out a little bit more.
Yeah,
So realizing that creativity is everywhere and being able to be inspired from everything is also slept on skill, because people don't know, people can't see the vision a lot of the times. And I feel
yeah.
like struggle. I feel like that's a struggle for a lot of artists too. Like, don't you see the way this shadow off this tree is casting? This is beautiful. We can create this. Like people are
Yeah,
like this is a warp effect in real life. Like, hello, this is a in
literally.
life
I
level.
mean, I feel like I'm the type of person who people will be talking to me and they'll just see my eyes drift off and just be
Yeah.
like, and I'm like dead listening, but I'm like, wait, over there, the way that light is hitting, that's crazy. I need to remember that,
Yes, for real. I love that. So outside of graphic design, like are there any other art mediums that you partake in to help you stay inspired, or just for funsies? Like is there
Oh, yeah.
anything else?
Oh, yeah. My house is like filled with funsies.
Love that. Love that.
I have like DJ equipment, every
Mhm.
graphic designer has to hit the DJ pipeline at
No,
some point.
it's true.
You
It's
just got to
so
do it.
true.
They might kick you out. I think they'll revoke your Adobe if you don't do it. I'm not really sure. I think that's how that
True.
works.
Oh my God,
Um,
we gotta talk about the graphic design to DJ pipeline.
it's heavy. It's actually, I'm pretty sure epicenter is here in New York. But and also pottery. Love pottery. Make
Me
the
too.
fun
Love
pots.
that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Everyone
yes.
told me I could not have a pottery wheel in my New York apartment, and lo and behold, it's here and it's happened. So
Oh, I love that. That is
um
such a thing where people are like, "How are you gonna have a pottery circle in a 800 square foot apartment?" Don't worry about it. Don't worry
yeah,
about it because it can get done.
it can get done. It's
Exactly.
you just have to make your house look a little bit like a murder scene when you're gonna use it. You like cover it with plastic so you don't get the
Small
ash.
sacrifices that need to be made, honestly.
It's fine. It's fine. I bought a cute pink shower curtain. It looks pretty when
I love that. Oh my God. I definitely, you gotta send me pictures. I want to see that.
yeah. But I also really love still writing, and I write just for myself mostly. I
Yeah.
love doing art for myself. I think it's very important to have art that you do outside of the needs of like material gain or exposure, just like so you remember what it feels like to feel good with art you make and that being enough.
Yes, I talked about that when ASAP Ferg did his album cover for Daryl. He painted his own portrait, and I was talking about how if you are an artist of any kind and are not dabbling into any other mediums besides the medium that you find yourself to be your profession or whatever is your chosen, like you're really holding yourself back. Like there, you gotta like explore and like allow inspiration from other places to come. Like I love also what's been my jam too is like the Legos. And at first that's like perfect
Ooh.
for me because I'm a Capricorn, so I'm very structured. I like order. But that's also, I love that because you can do like flowers and spaceships. And it's like, I like the idea of being able to like build something beautiful with my hands, especially because a lot of the work that we do is like online. So,
Mhm.
and even like printing out my mood boards, vision boards, whatever, like I need to have a physical, like I need to make it real for me sometimes. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so I always say that it's important for people to have something outside of that. But going kind of into like, you know, the process, how you work with clients, can you talk to me about that? Like, I guess I kind of want to know, like, what is an ideal client for you? And I guess this could be like everybody wants a client that like pays their invoice on time. Everybody wants a client to just like shut up and let me do the work. But like, what are the kind of the spaces with clients and other collaborating with other creatives that you feel like is good for you to excel creatively?
Ooh, I I love spaces where and this is actually one of the reasons why I was really excited about trying freelance is I love spaces where the creative feels unrestricted. As
Mm-hmm.
in I'm here and we're talking about, let's say, the cover art, but then we have an awesome idea from a music video that comes from discussing the cover art. So we move into that and we can move into that and we can
Yeah.
talk about it and and everyone's very collaborative. Like I love sets where it's like, the DP's like, oh, what if we do this and this? And I'm like, oh, that's sick. Yeah, let's do it. What if we try this on top of your idea? Like that feeling to me is really what it's all about. Like that's the payoff for creative for me. That moment where you're just like in the flow and everyone's like putting pieces and ideas to come together and make something and everyone's excited about it being a great result. That's my number one kind of vibe for collaborators. Like I like
Yeah.
people who are a little obsessed with it, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then when it comes to artists, I think I love people who have a sense of self.
Yeah.
um Even, and I mean it's hard, like there's a constant shifting narrative and social media and all that stuff that really like it impacts your sense of self. But I love artists who can see what they like and understand that they like it, because it's a lot of outside opinions when you're creating rollouts, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot
Mhm.
of opinions, not just from your fans, from your team, from the label, from your friends, from everyone. So if you can see your vision and your story and stick to it all the way through, I think that's a super important quality in it, because the noise can get super overwhelming, and that'll cause you to like do deviations that'll maybe dilute the end creative in some.
Right.
We can always bring it back. I'm also a big believer in versatility. Just to
Yeah.
contradict myself completely now. Um, but, but I think one of the most important skills as a creative director is being able to pivot on an idea. And sometimes I would say I even pivot too quickly. Like if I see something on set isn't working, I'll be like, yo, just let it rock. We're gonna work around it and do this and this, and we're gonna get it another way.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to kind of really persist on an idea if it's important. So I do try to like measure like how hard I'm gonna go versus how much I'm gonna like just let it rock. But
Yeah.
I think I think it is definitely that kind of balance of understanding that this is art. There's no wrong answer. It's
Yes.
really about how you make the next solution the right answer, you know? So if
Mhm.
that solution didn't work and you couldn't make it happen, then why is the next solution right? How can you make it fit? Because it's all customizable, right? It's all,
Mhm.
the only constraints are your budget, time, all those things, you know, the little elements that make up what the constraints of the actual job might be. But the art
Right.
itself is unlimited. So I actually don't even believe in telling artists fully, like, no, we can't do something. I'll tell you, like, okay, if you're doing that, this is like the logic that'll come with that. And this is the vision. And do you worry about these things and blah, 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 and really explain out why I think it doesn't work. But if the
Right.
artist doubled down on that, I'm like, okay, let's figure out how to make it work, because ultimately it's their baby. And I want them
Yeah.
to feel like that connection to it, that they can see the vision in their mind and in their heart of what it was came through, even if other people had another opinion on what it should be.
Exactly. And I love that you help artists feel supported in that way, because I think sometimes a lot of people feel like, I don't want to say, but a lot of people feel kind of crazy. They're like, oh, I got this big outlandish idea and I'm trying to do this, but what if we did this? And it's cool. It's really cool that you have that patience and that like steadiness and the ability to pivot, because oh, I hate pivot. I'm not good at that at all. I'm like, we came here, we're doing this, we need to execute this. But now I'm starting to get out of that, like, because to your point, like, it's okay. Anything that
Mhm,
we do, anything that we execute, as long as it has that underlying vision of sometimes of the self of your artist. Is this still who you are as an artist? There's millions of ways that this could be executed. So
mhm.
that's really dope that you allow people to, you give people that space that they could move around. That, I think that's what makes a really good creative director, actually.
Well, and I think as creatives, we need to be conscious that like, we can be not seeing something that's coming in the future. There's
Yeah.
always that moment where an artist does a cover where everyone's like, huh? And then we're like, actually, that's kind of fire years
Yes.
later.
Yes. Yes.
So I very much try to stay conscious of the fact that I'm not here to arbiter for them what is a good idea and what is a bad idea. I'm here to make whatever idea we have a good idea.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Especially like, it's so true. We see time and time again cover art that has grown to be so iconic. Like someone was asking me what's my favorite cover art, and I'm like, I'm never going to have a solid answer. I do want to have like a list of like my top 10, but like one of the most memorable cover arts to me was Miseducation of Lauren Hill. And
Right.
thinking about how that was, and I used to always see it and as a kid and on the iPod, and my mom would just play it around the house and have the CD. And then one day it hit me, I'm like, oh my God, this is a wooden desk. This is on wood. And it's like sometimes stuff, details like that don't hit until way later. So
Of course,
um
yeah.
it's I love art and cover art that's like very, if you know, you know, because some people got it the first time. It didn't take people years for it to register. So
Yeah.
I love when art can hit like that. Like that's how you make things timeless.
Yes, I
And I think that
agree.
that's great if you can do that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's exciting when you can make something and you can watch the audience understand, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I mean, I even think like, you know, there's a certain kind of special moment that happens even when you work with an idea. Let's say you get an idea from the team and you're like, oh, damn, this isn't really what I was envisioning. And then you kind of spend your time working on it. And when it comes out the other side, it's something you wouldn't have come up with, you know, because
Hmm.
it wasn't an idea you liked. But then it actually ends up being something maybe, I mean, if you're doing it right, it should be still fire. And you're
Okay.
like, wow, like I made something completely different and completely not me. And that's exciting to me. Like when the
Hmm.
art goes beyond my identity as an artist and really kind of meets the creative where it needs to be. I always argue that style is always like a byproduct of a good design solution. So if the style should never be the first thing you pick. The style should come through what you decide is the best decision for the art and for the moment, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I really feel like that's like true. That's how you truly alchemize. Like that's like really how you get to make something out of nothing. Well, not
Yeah.
even nothing, but how you transform. Art is so magical. I love that. Okay. What is so talking about like projects and I'm sure you've had experience with different type of creatives and different sets and different environments. So what thus far has been your favorite project to graphic design and creative direct, or both? Because I know sometimes those can be two different vibes.
I don't even know which to pick because I think for me it's more like there are moments in each project that stand out for me and I will remember.
Okay,
Um,
give me like two of your most the first two situations experiences that pop into your head.
Yeah, I mean, there Jasmine's hotels was like a pretty magical experience shooting
Yeah.
because we it was COVID, which made it unmagical in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we, you know, as a crew, we all kind of like gathered at Jasmine's house in the outskirts of Philly, and we made like an outdoor studio with V flats and stuff just in her yard to be able to like shoot all the assets of everything and do the tiny desk and everything just like over a series of days. And that project really stuck with me because the conversations being had on the project were Black women telling their experiences and love and life. And there was definitely a moment on that set where they were telling their story, and I'm full on tearing up, and I'm like, shit, like I'm literally gonna cry on the set. And then I look around, and literally the camera guy's like, you know, like we're all like struggling to keep it together. And I've had a couple moments like that where, you know, we're on a set. I mean, like Amir Van, we shot the cover for Emmanuel in Houston on the corner where his father passed away. His mother shaved his head, and that's where we shot the cover. And that was another moment where we're all like sniffling, and I look around and it's just like not a dry eye in the house. So when you're really making art with those layers of meaning built in, the emotional hit everyone in that set, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really exciting for me, and I love those moments. So those for me mean a lot, just because I felt like the moment of making the art almost reflected the emotion we wanted to put into it, which is very powerful. I think that's like some
I think so
alchemy,
too.
design alchemy, put the
Exactly.
extra sauce on it type shit.
Exactly.
Um, but then I think just from like a satisfying design perspective, obviously Givion's project was super satisfying to me just because I got to touch so much of it and really like be across so much of it. And when you get that ability, you can create so much cohesion and really build an identity that lasts that artist forever. So there are things they can just start referencing themselves at that point because their identity is so kind of signature to them that other people tell you even when, oh, so and so kind of has a like Giveon-esque vibe and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And
Mhm.
that's really when you know you started to build a lane for them, when other people like identify that vibe as something.
Yes.
So yeah, but I mean, I could go on forever because there's always like, I love drawing like anime, and I got to draw anime for both Lolo and Rosalia. And I was like, so geeked.
Mhm.
My inner otaku was screaming. I was like, hell yeah, I get to do anime merch for like two of my favorite girlies. It was a great
Love that. That's
time.
such a, and I'm sure that's like such a moment too. Like as artists, we have so many different like lanes and interests and micro interests, and like to be able to like touch that in your main way of doing art is, I can empathize. That's probably like a really dope, a really dope feeling. So it's so funny. My next question actually was about hotels, because, and specifically about typography, like we were talking about earlier, because that's one of the things that I was saying I appreciate about your work, how you play with the spacing and the typography and the shadows and things like that. So can we just talk about that project and how that project came about, like how you were introduced to that project? And you kind of already told us, but like what was the brief like how did it go from A to Z? Like what was the whole process of that like?
Yeah, I got introduced to the project pretty early, through obviously through the label. At the time I was working as a creative for RCA, so they, put me on the project, and there was an amazing EVP of the label called Carolyn Williams, and she really has been so much of an architect, I feel, in a way, of a lot of the big R&B moments
Mm,
we know and love. And she really brought me on and introduced me to the team and was like, just pitch them what like, this is what the project is. They talked a lot about the conversations in the album, so like
mhm,
interludes, stuff like that, and how they wanted to make that into like a visual conversation for the fans to be able to like be a part of.
mhm,
um, and from there they were just like, okay, cool, like how does this look like to you? Given that we're talking about like creating this very honest, but also like no, like not taking any bullshit image of Jasmine. I really
yeah,
felt like it was her kind of like saying like, yeah, this is who I am now, and this is what it is, and I'm going to talk about all these things, and I'm just going to be very unapologetically myself with all my girls,
yeah,
um, and so for me, there was a sense of documentation, a sense of like archival, of
mhm.
like we were like really documenting and saying like, these are their stories, Law and Order, like
Sure.
exactly, like it was like we really had to make sure that like this was not. I didn't want it to feel like girls gabbing. I
Yeah,
wanted it to feel like we're documenting these moments, kind of
yeah,
thing. More and more of a documentary approach, I guess, to it. But so Helvetica kind of started pretty early. I remember the first pitch guide I did for them, I did with Helvetica, because I was just like, I remember I was looking for a font and I'm like, these fonts too soft, man. I
Helvetica is that girl. That's my top five. Because, and it's so funny that you talk about how you didn't want it to feel like, oh, just girls gabbing. Like it's true. I feel like Helvetica really gives us that. It's bold and it's like not masculine though. Like, and I think the like the slimness, but like the thickness of it at the same time is like, and then I love your color, the greens and the blacks and then the black and white. And when you were just talking about how you were at her house in Philly in the backyard, like I feel like that realness, even like in one of the concepts there's like a flower in there, I think
yes,
there's,
yes,
so like all of that, everything you're saying is like click. This is like such a full circle moment, because everything that you're saying is totally translated through. Even like, was there, did I make this up, but there was like I don't know, risograph, is that the right name of it, with like the dots and stuff, like,
it's faked risograph, but I like that you guys felt like it was real.
yeah, exactly. It tends for that. So it's like all of that I think really does like feed into that messages of like, nah, these are grown women that actually went through stuff in real life. Like this is not,
Yeah,
let's not downplay the emotion of women experiences. It can still be real, and well, that's why I love the use of Helvetica. It could still feel very feminine and still feel very
Mhm.
curvy, but structured, like so juxtaposing. Love that font. Really big fan of Helvetica here.
Well, and I think, in our generation, Helvetica actually has a really unique place in urban
Yes,
culture now, post
yes,
Virgil Abloh. And so I think it was also
yep.
kind of a nod to that, and a nod
Mhm,
to that like new movement in, I think will be documented as kind of a movement in graphic design later on, that
mhm,
was kind of this resurgence of this kind of functional focus style where it was
mhm.
almost like overly descriptive and in a way where Virgil would put like the carpet in
Well,
quotes and
yeah,
then
yeah.
yeah and all
Well,
that stuff.
yeah.
So I think there was kind of a resurgence of this typeface specifically in urban culture or in streetwear or however whatever term you want to use to define it, in Black culture, let's say, period.
Yes. Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and I felt like this was a great moment to show also because I think R&B has traditionally been very romanticized. And yes,
Mhm.
R&B is very romantic, but R&B's got a lot to say as well.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a storytelling medium. And so
Yeah.
I think a font that like Helvetica that has a kind of documentarian lean kind of it fits in if you find the right place for it.
Yeah, I love my people. This is great. We're talking about R&B and typefaces. Like this is such my jam. I'm so excited. I'm
Me
fangirling. But no, shout out to Helvetica. I kind of was doing a bar that I really love in Miami is Dante's Hi-Fi, and I love just going there and like looking at all the cover art and the album covers, and like I
Mhm.
find that a lot of, even in the 70s there was a little bit of use, there was a use of some, there was some Helvetica moments, but again, those, it was more like italics and it was more like the super
Mhm.
thin. So I love, to your point, like to see the evolution of like urban, and again, that's very soulful, that's very gospel, that typeface was used. So, oh, I love that. Somebody needs to do a documentary on that. I would run that up for real about typography. There was
Yeah.
actually a lady talked about, ooh, I can't think of it right now. I'm gonna send it to you later. But there was a lady on TikTok that talked about some subculture and how it was like fake. I think for Black History Month, like in the 90s when everybody would use that very like boxy um typeface to do anything in relation to Africa or Black History Month. And she
Mhm.
talked
Yes.
about why that was like fake news and how that wasn't, that was the I don't know, has like, that was like the whitewashed version of how Westerners wanted to perceive that culture. And I was like, oh, this is so niche and so interesting. I love that.
No, I mean, it's actually I really feel it's so before I decided on graphic design, one of the
Mhm.
things I was considering was linguistic anthropology, which is
Ooh,
obviously like the origin of languages and how that
yeah.
culture impacts how the language was made. And I think one of the reasons I ended up choosing graphic design is also because you do start to see those influences in how type is visualized, like what you're talking
Hmm.
about, like
Hmm.
how the perception of a culture will influence how the type is visualized. And I think as designers, it's super important for us to be conscious of that because that's how
Yeah.
we add layers of meanings to things, like speaking about moments that were kind of pivotal or I guess like memorable to me. It was like working for Aretha Franklin's estate during
Hmm.
like that felt really pivotal and important in that moment. And I was like, God, I can't just like slap a font that is, like, I don't know if John Baskerville had slaves, like if I put Baskerville on this cover and then it's like,
Yeah.
cool, I'm making an Aretha Franklin cover art in the middle of BLM and I just put
Yes.
a font by a slave owner on it. I
It's
don't know.
true.
A lot
It's
of
so real. Yes.
so, I think understanding and even having an identity that understands that cultural impact is super important because then you can kind of be like, wait, let me think about this. And so what did I ended up having to I literally looked up images of the March on Washington, traced the letters from the signage
Oh,
and
love
made
that.
the type like that. Does anyone
Yeah.
know that? No. Does it make a huge difference to most people? Probably not. But to
Mhm.
me, I feel like I stood guard for the integrity of Aretha's message. And that
Yeah.
is important to me as a Black woman. So I feel like that's the value of bringing culture and identity into your design.
And I love this is such a cultural conversation. We talked about everything from DR and Latino culture and Black culture. Just like this is so great. Thank you so much for yapping for real.
Of course, I love
So closing in, I have one or two more questions. So I want to talk about like your what types of things are you looking to do in the future? And I'm struggling with wording this question carefully because I hate when people are like, what are you gonna do in 5 years? Like as a creative, that's so like I personally don't like that question because it's like I could be doing anything in 5 years. But as of right now, the trajectory that you're on, like what is something within the future that you would want to see yourself being a part of?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this recently, so it's good timing. I think obviously all the things I do, I want to keep doing them more
Right.
music videos, more stage, more all that.
Right.
But I also have found myself really interested now that I'm kind of outside of the label system, for however long that lasts. I feel like it's like you're dating someone and you're like, we're breaking up. No, we're back together.
They're broken up again. They'll be back together.
Exactly. But I mean, as being outside of the label now, I've always been really passionate about identifying new and random music. I always say like my algorithm feeds me artists with only under 7,000 streams. They're like,
Mhm.
here, we know you'll love this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
actually, do thank you,
And which algorithm? Like through your streaming, like through your social media algorithm, or do your musical streaming
All of them.
algorithm?
All of
Okay.
them are like from TikTok all the way down to Spotify to Pandora, all of them really, because I do listen to a lot of the mainstream stuff. I have
Yeah.
no shame on that, but
Yeah.
I think a bulk of what I listen to is like, random tracks that my friend will be like, what is this? Send me that,
Mhm.
you know? And that really excites me when I see someone bringing a sound that I haven't really seen visualized yet.
Yes.
So I love the idea of working and developing independent new artists. I mean, I had the experience of working with Giveon from when he was like really, really early into
Mhm.
into where he was not like beginning of this year,
Yeah.
and really see all of that kind of come to life. And I really love that I've done it with a couple other artists as well, where we get to start super, super early in their careers and kind of build the lore from day one. So I'd love to see where I could take that. Is that
Mm.
like an incubator? Is it a type of like label partnership thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been kind of like the road where creative meets A&R is an interesting place, and
Yeah.
I'm just like keeping my eye on it. I don't know where.
Yeah. I think a lot of how things are structured in that way are definitely going to be changing. Or I don't even want to say changing, like evolving. Like it's just
Yeah,
the natural progression of things. And I think now we are actually getting to the space where it's like the creatives are starting to like get their like, people are starting to realize that creatives, we know what we're talking about. Like
yeah,
it comes down to like, yes, colors and typefaces and icons, but it also is like pattern recognition, cultural brand development, cultural, like there's all these things that people are starting to be like, wait, you are an expert in this. So I totally think that that's something that's like that feels like a natural progression of, excuse me, like what's happening right now. And that'll be really exciting. I would love to see more creatives in kind of those roles to be able to position artists in certain spaces and certain like vibes. Like I always love, I think, learning about artists interest and incorporating that into like their big brand. Like
yeah.
I love how
Very.
Megan Thee Stallion, she is big on anime, and I love how there's like a new, she kind of like showed people who like to be in the strip clubs and twerk about
Mhm.
anime. Like, granted, the
Mhm.
people who are into anime like knew about that before, but she's kind of like bridging those two
Yeah.
subcultures together. And I think that's because of her personality and because she was able to like fight, and she had a team that could help her like fight for that like elbow room a little bit. And
Mhm.
I think there's so many musicians that have untapped creative stuff that
Agreed.
people want to see more of. And people, people have these cult like followings and stuff, and like their fans are gonna roll with them forever. So let's just get them in their interests. Like, I heard
Yeah.
recently Tiana Taylor and Victoria Monet are apparently both in culinary school. Like, that is
Uh-huh.
so cool. Like, that's so like random and cool. Like, I would love to see how can we combine their interest for culinary and arts into their R&B music and their songwriting and Tiana Taylor's wonderful creative direction. Tiana Taylor's a good example too of a creative being in that kind of like A&R artist development space
Yes.
too.
Yeah,
So
100%. I mean, I think the cool thing also with all of this stuff is it's like the cool thing and the dangerous thing, right? The
yeah.
commodification of our interests, right? There
Hmm.
is like now an artist that can find space to, like you were saying, the Megan. I mean, she did even get pushback when she first started entering. I remember because I was on the Crunchyroll site and on
Hmm.
their Instagram when she was first posting there, and you were getting a lot of people like, "What does Megan know about anime?" Blah 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 blah. So I think it really is. It's interesting because there is a certain level of like, yeah, you're commodifying an interest for that you have, and that does help build your brand. And so you kind of have to then understand the trade-off in that. There's a
Yeah.
trade-off that comes, like obviously now you're going to have to accommodate all these people and their interest in your interest and get paid for this, and now it's no longer just like something you love, but at the same
Yeah.
time you're creating a more enriching persona for your fans so that your fans can be like, oh my god, she's a Black girl who knows anime. That meant a lot to me personally as
Right.
a fan. So
Yeah.
it might get more niche, but it's still, the nicheness actually helps because you're bringing in people who maybe weren't as tapped into your music, who are like, oh wait, she's like me, you know.
Exactly, exactly. And I think like just highlighting that people are so multifaceted. But I love how you bring up that point about how it is kind of like, I don't want to say sacrifice because that's so dramatic, but it is kind of like if it gets to a point where it's like it can't just be like a fun little interest anymore. That's why they say like you can't monetize off of every whatever. But
Exactly.
to your point, I think it just also goes back to like, what do you value as an artist? Is it important that you curate this community, or is it important that you and whatever that is, we should support that. We should
Yeah.
support the artists. If they don't wanna, then we should support that, and we should find that balance, and that of maybe only giving us like a drop, giving the people a drop of the anime, like
Yeah.
whatever it is. I think that there should just be more support. And like earlier you were saying about curating that specific space for artists to be not told no. I think that that is something um, that goes into that. Going back to how that's a good creative director right there. That can figure out how to make whatever we do, we're gonna make it good. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I firmly believe that. I don't think there's any idea that there's no way to make it good, you know? I mean,
yeah.
there are ideas that you probably, even if you make it look good, it might not resonate with the
Mhm.
audience.
Mhm.
But as long as you're aware of that and you're doing that, and maybe that's an intentional, that could be an intentional choice. You want something that jars your audience, that kind of shocks them. That can be intentional. You can think that through. So it's just always really being thoughtful about every layer and every emotion that's going to be put into the art, but also perceived from the art. And it's really
Yeah.
important to understand that, because as your art goes all around the world, I mean, we've all seen cases where some cover will have something and then someone will see something and be like, that's disrespectful,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you got to kind of understand that now everything goes to a global audience. Even if you're a SoundCloud rapper with
Yep.
20 likes, there's a chance someone in Mumbai is going to see that.
it's so true. Like, what that makes me think of is Zara Larsson. She is Swedish, and in
Mhm.
one of her songs is "Puss Puss," and apparently that means kiss kiss. And but people are like puss like coochie. So I love, but also it's teaching people. It's showing people
Yeah.
like, girl, you know, everybody in the world don't say puss for coochie. So stop. I love when artists and creativity kind of like give us that lens that it ain't
Yeah.
just one little way how you might perceive or view things.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
love that whole rollout, by the way. Shout out to the people behind Zara Larson. That whole Midnight Sun thing was so fun, so like new nostalgia. I think Pink Panthers came up with that saying, but yeah, Midnight Sun, that whole rollout was so fun. Love
Yeah,
that.
I think that was, it should be Charlotte Rutherford, and then from the label side, it's Tina Ibanez.
Ugh, yes. Love that. So fun. That was great. Yeah, gonna definitely. Okay, so my last question is, after all these years of being a creative and working in graphic designing and freelance and working with the label side, like what is something that like I guess like what is your biggest takeaway? Like what's something that you can go back in time and tell your younger self,
Mm,
if anything?
mm.
Like what's a piece of advice or just like
Yeah.
something, if you knew, what do you wish you would have known back then?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important piece has been, and the most like, uh, the message I've had to repeat myself the most has been to trust my eye.
Mm,
Um, I think especially as Black women in this space, we're very much used to accommodating. And like I said, I'm very quick to pivot and make another idea work. I feel like if you have endless ideas, you can make anything work. So I'm
yeah.
never mad or scared of that. But I do think like there have been times where, because I'm trying to make sure everyone feels cohesive, I'll deter a little bit from pushing on my own vision. And that's always been the message that I want to bring back to myself. Actually, when I got my first job in music, I made myself stickers that said "Trust Your Eye" and put them on all my computers, just so I would
Love
really
that. Love that.
remember that the reason people are coming to you as a creative director is for your vision. It's for your interpretation. So you
Right.
don't have to dilute that. You don't have to, that is what the client is paying for.
Mhm.
So I very much push and try to always give myself that reinforcement of like, let's go down the road of what you imagined, and let's go all the way down there and see, where we end up, type thing. I think as you're coming up as a designer, you'll be inclined to conform to a lot of the ideals or rules that you're being told. And I think you should explore them and understand why they work and understand what they create and how they function. But ultimately, if, like we're all told not to stretch type, I stretch type every day. I like I have zero problems or qualms stretching type which way I feel like it needs to
Oh,
be.
I love that. You like click that. What is it on Photoshop? It's like a little link button. You're like, let's check that off. We're not using
Yeah,
that.
hell no. Like I think it's I think it's really about understanding what it does communication wise to the type when you stretch it, and
Hmm.
then being able to use that as a tool. So to me, that's why I say like it's so important to trust your eye, because sometimes you may be like, oh, this is not quite what I was told to do, but I feel like it's going to be better. So
Hmm.
see it through, even if you got to do the other version just so they can see why it's better.
Yeah.
See it through, because I think that's where you're really going to develop your voice as a designer, not in the execution, but in the process, in how
Yeah.
you approach your design and how you approach your design process and how you think about how you're going to do things. That's where you're going to find what makes you signature and what your vision is, and how to trust your eye, because you'll get results that you like and you'll be able to be like, okay, I trust myself now, like,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I ate that. Okay, I can do
yeah,
it. I'm
yeah,
good. and
yeah,
and that kind of goes back to your when you were saying, when you kind of discovered, when you were like, graffiti is my thing, that's like the one thing I can do. I really resonate with that, because as a kid and as a creative, like, you're like, ugh, if I can't do anything else, I could do this. And that's, and I love that feeling. It's like, how do we incorporate, how do we tune into that vibration, that feeling? And that's exactly how you do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it'll really also help you expand your
Hmm.
understanding of, because I think for me, like, I usually say my work doesn't have a style. Like, if you look at one of my projects, you might not know that, Hotels and Giveon are by the same designer.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's, to me, my style. My style is that I very much can immerse myself in the other person's creative and just use my intuition from my eye to find, like, okay, this may not be the lane that's natural to me stylistically, or it may not be a culture I know even, but
Hmm.
I know how my design process works, and I know how to do my research, and I know how to integrate messages into visuals. And that is where my style really lies.
I love that. I love that so much. You ate that question. That's like my favorite question. I love that. Give the people. There's no audience, but the people, the live audience would have clapped for that. That was great. Amaya, thank you so much for chatting with me. I feel like we had such a good conversation. Tell the people where they can find you, where your work, or where you at, where you want to be at, where you're trying to be at. Just give us the whatever.
Yes, period. I mean, you guys can always find me on Instagram at Epistolare. All the other socials too. Y'all just Google my name. I'll pop up
Google
somewhere.
her. Google her. Exactly
Google
that.
me. And yeah, you'll definitely see me around on some of your artist campaigns. Keep an eye out for Esty. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. Keep an eye out for I Am Lyric, and definitely check out some of Samara Sin stuff. This year's been full of amazing artists. So I'm really excited for you guys to see everything we've all been working on. And I would love to work with more international artists.
Yeah.
That's the goal. So, hit me up, Korea, Africa, whatever. I'm here for y'all.
I love that. Thank you so much again, Amaya.